A cold wind sweeps across the endless grasslands. The camera glides over rolling plains stretching to the horizon, where winter frost clings to the blades of grass like tiny shards of glass. In the distance, black silhouettes of riders appear against the rising sun. They move as one, silent, relentless like shadows given life. Their banners snap in the wind, each marked with a fierce emblem of the Mongols. It is the 13th century, and the earth itself seems to tremble under the thunder of hooves. At the heart of this army rides a man whose name will echo through every corner of the known world, Temüjin, the man who would become Genghis Khan. But this is no mere story of conquest. This is the saga of a people forged by the land itself, a civilization born in the harshest of environments, destined to reshape the map of the medieval world. Long before empires rose in marble and gold, this land known today as Mongolia was a realm of extremes. Winters bit with unrelenting cold, dropping temperatures far below freezing, while summers scorched the plains under an unforgiving sun. The soil was thin, the forests sparse, the rivers few. Life here demanded resilience. The people who survived did so not by bending the land to their will, but by mastering its rhythm. Nomadic tribes roamed in search of pasture for their herd sheep, goats, camels, and a prized Mongol horse. These were no mere animals of burden. The horse was an extension of the warrior himself, capable of carrying a rider across vast distances without rest. In this environment, survival meant more than strength. It demanded cunning, adaptability, and unity in the face of a common enemy, nature itself. Yet unity was rare. For centuries, the steppe was a patchwork of warring clans and rival tribes, each led by its own Khan, each guarding its territory with fierce pride. Blood feuds could last generations, sparked by stolen horses, broken alliances, or slights to honor. In such a world, alliances shifted like the wind, and power belonged to those who could command both loyalty and fear. The Mongol culture was steeped in tradition. Shamanistic beliefs connected the people to the spirits of the sky and the earth. They revered Tengri, the eternal blue sky, and believed their fate was woven into its vast expanse. They lived in Gehr's circular felt tents, easy to dismantle and carry as they followed the migrations of their herds. Hospitality to strangers was a sacred duty, yet betrayal was met with ruthless vengeance. These contradictions defined life on the steppe. Generosity within the tribe, unyielding ferocity toward enemies. It was from this crucible of hardship and constant conflict that Temüjin emerged. Born around 1162 to a tribal leader, his early life was shaped by loss, betrayal, and exile. His father was poisoned by rivals when Temüjin was just a boy. His family was cast out, left to starve in the barren wilderness. Yet in these trials he learned the lessons of survival, how to inspire loyalty, how to adapt, and most importantly how to unite the fractious tribes under a single banner. And so, from the cold winds of the steppe, a storm began to form, one that would soon sweep across Asia, the Middle East, and Europe, leaving behind an empire greater in size than any before or since the age of the Mongols was about to begin. The year is 1186. On the windswept plains, a gathering unlike any in living memory is taking place. The leaders of multiple tribesmen who had once been sworn enemies now sit in a great circle beneath a vast ceremonial banner. Before them stands Temüjin, no longer the hungry, exiled boy of his youth, but a man whose voice carries like the wind and whose presence commands silence. In a rare moment of unity, the chiefs raise him upon their shoulders and proclaim him Genghis Khan, universal ruler. This is more than a title. It is a declaration of war against the chaos that has plagued the steppes for centuries. Unifying the tribes was no small feat. Genghis understood what others had not, that loyalty could not be bought solely through bloodlines or marriage alliances. He created a new order, where positions of power were granted based on merit and loyalty, not aristocratic heritage. He abolished the traditional tribal hierarchy and reorganized his people into units of tens, hundreds and thousands each, mixed with members of different clans. This dismantled old rivalries and ensured that every warrior's loyalty was to him, not to a local chief. But uniting the tribes was only the first step. Genghis set his sights far beyond the horizon. The Mongols, long underestimated by neighboring kingdoms, were about to become the most formidable military force on earth. Their weapon was not just the sword, it was speed, discipline, and relentless strategy. The Mongol horse archers were unlike any warriors the world had ever seen. They could fire accurately at full gallop, turn their mounts on a dime, and disappear into the landscape as quickly as they appeared. In 1206, with his power consolidated, Genghis Khan launched his first major campaigns beyond Mongolia's borders. His armies moved like a shadow over the land, striking swiftly and vanishing before the enemy could react. His initial conquests brought him into conflict with the Shishia kingdom to the west and the powerful Jin dynasty of northern China. These were wealthy, fortified states, with cities of stone and walls that stretched for miles. But against the Mongols' mobility and cunning, even the mightiest fortresses proved vulnerable. One of Genghis Khan's greatest weapons was his ability to adapt. From the Chinese, he adopted siege technology, catapults, battering rams, and incendiary weapons, and improved them to devastating effect. No longer limited to open battle, The Mongols could now lay siege to even the most heavily defended cities. When persuasion failed, terror became a tool of conquest. Cities that resisted were razed, their populations massacred, a brutal warning to others who might dare defy him. Yet Genghis was more than a destroyer, he was also a visionary builder. In the lands he conquered, he established systems of law, yes, ensuring order across a growing empire. He created a network of postal stations, allowing messages to travel thousands of miles in days. Trade routes, once dangerous and fragmented, flourished under Mongol protection. Caravans carrying silk, spices, and precious metals moved across Eurasia with unprecedented safety. Still, for the enemies of the Mongols, there was no safety, only the knowledge that the thunder of hooves could arrive at any time. Genghis's empire was expanding, and his eyes now turned to lands even farther afield. The great wave of conquest had only begun. The 1220s, across the old world, from the markets of Samarkand to the palaces of Persia, whispers spread like wildfire. The Mongols are coming. It was not just fear, it was awe. An unstoppable tide was sweeping across Asia, and no kingdom seemed strong enough to resist it. After subduing the Shisha and shattering the Jin dynasty's northern hold, Genghis Khan turned west toward the wealthy cities of Central Asia. His pretext was simple: vengeance. The Khwarezmian Empire, a vast Muslim state stretching from Persia to the Silk Road, had insulted him. A caravan of Mongol merchants emissaries of peace was seized, its men killed. The governor responsible expected the incident to pass unnoticed. Instead, it ignited one of the most devastating campaigns in medieval history. The Mongol army descended like a storm. Samarkand fell, its defenders cut down, its survivors scattered. Bukhara, a jewel of Islamic civilization, was taken in a matter of days. The city's grand mosque was transformed into a stable for Mongol horses. Standing before its terrified inhabitants, Genghis Khan reportedly declared, "I am the punishment of God. If you had not committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me upon you." From the steppes of Mongolia to the Caspian Sea, the earth burned beneath the Mongol advance. Yet their victories were not the result of sheer brutality alone. They were masters of psychological warfare. Before a siege, Mongol scouts would infiltrate enemy lands, spreading rumors of an army too vast to count. Defenders would often surrender without a fight, terrified by the tales of those who resisted. In 1221, the Mongols reached the edges of Europe for the first time. Their forces clashed with the armies of the Kievan Rus and Poland, moving swiftly and vanishing just as suddenly. They were testing the western frontier, and the kingdoms of Europe could scarcely comprehend the speed and scale of their movements. But Genghis's ambitions were not limitless. His empire required consolidation. The vast network of conquered territories was stitched together by roads, postal relays, and fortified outposts, enabling orders to travel faster than any army in history. The Mongols' expansion also transformed the Silk Road into a secure artery of trade and culture. Persian glass, Chinese silk, Arab medicine, and European silver now moved freely across continents. For the first time, the Eastern and Western worlds were linked in a single economic system, guarded ironically by the very warriors who had once destroyed so many of its cities. But even as the empire swelled, the horizon was darkening. In 1227, during a campaign against the Tangut kingdom of Shishaya, Genghis Khan fell ill, some say from wounds in battle, others whisper from an accident or even assassination. His death was kept secret until the campaign was complete, ensuring no enemy would dare strike in a moment of weakness. When the news finally broke, the empire he had built in just over 2 decades stretched from the Pacific Ocean to the Caspian Sea. Yet this was not the end. It was the beginning of a new chapter, where his successors would take the Mongol Empire beyond even his wildest dreams, into the very heart of Europe and the sands of the Middle East. In the wake of Genghis Khan's death, the empire he forged could easily have splintered under the weight of its own enormity. Yet his heirs, bound by the Yasa and the blood oath of unity, rallied to preserve and expand his vision. The mantle of leadership fell to his third son, Genghis Khan, a man whose personality was less fierce than his father's but whose ambitions were just as vast. Genghis inherited not just an empire, but a war machine fine-tuned to perfection. Under his rule, the Mongols struck east and west with renewed force. In China, they drove deep into the heart of the Jin dynasty, bringing the empire to its knees. By 1234, northern China was firmly under Mongol control, opening the gateway to the wealthy cities of the south. But it was to the west that the Mongol storm unleashed its most terrifying force. Genghis' generals, Subutai and Batu, launched a campaign that would bring the armies of the steppe into the very heart of Europe. Sweeping through the Rus principalities, they crushed city after city, Moscow, Vladimir, Kiev, leaving a trail of ash in their wake. In 1241, they struck into Poland and Hungary, defeating European knights with shocking ease. At the Battle of Mohi, Mongol forces used feigned retreats and encirclement tactics to annihilate the Hungarian army, demonstrating a mastery of battlefield deception that Europe had never witnessed. It seemed no force could stop them. Vienna lay within reach. The gates of Western Europe were open. But then, As if by divine intervention, the advance halted. News arrived that Genghis Khan had died in Karakoram, the empire's capital. Following tradition, all Mongol princes were required to return home for the election of a new great Khan. The armies withdrew, and Europe was spared at least for now. Under successive Konskyok-Mangi and eventually Kublai, the Mongol Empire reached its zenith. Manangi pushed into the Middle East, where the Mongols captured Baghdad in 1258. The city, once the jewel of the Islamic world, was sacked in a week of destruction so complete that the Tigris River reportedly ran black with ink from the libraries and red with the blood of its citizens. Meanwhile, in the east, Kublai Khan turned his gaze to China's Song dynasty. Unlike his predecessors, Kublai was not just a conqueror, he was a ruler in the grand imperial tradition. He moved the capital to what is now Beijing and established the Yuan dynasty, marking the first time in history that all of China was ruled by a foreign power. His court became a hub of global culture and commerce, attracting visitors like the Venetian merchant Marco Polo, whose tales would ignite Europe's imagination for centuries. At its height, the Mongol Empire stretched from the Korean peninsula to the Danube River, from the forests of Siberia to the deserts of Arabia. It was the largest contiguous land empire the world had ever seen, covering more than 33 million square kilometers. Yet even in its grandeur, the seeds of division were beginning to take root, seeds that would one day bring this colossal empire to its knees. The vastness of the Mongol Empire was both its triumph and its curse. No empire in history had ever spanned such distances, and no single ruler could personally control its farthest reaches. After Kublai Khan's reign, the bonds that once held the empire together began to fray. The great Khans in the east could no longer enforce their will on the distant western territories, and the Mongol world splintered into rival Khanates: the Golden Horde in Russia, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, the Ilkhanate in Persia, and the Yuan dynasty in China. Each Khanate developed its own priorities, alliances, and rivalries. The unity forged by Genghis's vision dissolved into competition. Trade still flowed along the Silk Road, but the harmony that had once made it possible weakened. Old enemies, long kept in check by Mongol dominance, began to re-emerge in the west. The Golden Horde faced the rising power of Moscow and the advance of the Ottoman Turks in Persia. The Ilkhanate crumbled under dynastic disputes and the devastating impact of the Black Death, which traveled along the very trade routes the Mongols had once protected. Central Asia became a chessboard of shifting alliances, as the Chagatai Khanate fractured into smaller states. Even in the heart of the empire, trouble was brewing. The Yuan dynasty, once a symbol of Mongol supremacy, faced mounting resentment from the Han Chinese population. Extravagant spending, court corruption, and natural disasters fueled unrest. In 1368, the Ming dynasty rose in rebellion, driving the Mongols from Beijing and forcing them back to their ancestral homeland on the steppe. The dream of a united Mongol world had come to an end. Yet even in decline, the Mongol legacy endured. They had redrawn the map of the medieval world, creating the first truly interconnected Eurasian system. Under their rule, ideas, technologies, and cultures traveled farther and faster than ever before. Gunpowder from China found its way to Europe. Persian astronomy influenced Chinese scholars. Medical knowledge crossed from the Islamic world into the West. The postal relay system became a model for future communication networks, and perhaps their most enduring contribution was psychological, the sheer reminder of what was possible. The Mongols proved that a nomadic people, dismissed for centuries as barbarians, could forge an empire through adaptability, discipline, and vision. For centuries after their fall, rulers from Moscow to Istanbul to Delhi would look to the Mongol model for inspiration, sometimes to emulate, sometimes to avoid. Today, the Mongols live on in memory, legend, and even DNA. Genetic studies suggest that millions carry the bloodline of Genghis Khan, a testament to the scale of his influence. From the windswept plains of Mongolia to the ruins of Baghdad, from the gates of Vienna to the walls of Xi'an, the echo of hoofbeats still lingers, a ghostly reminder of the storm that once swept across the world, reshaping it forever. The Mongol Empire may have collapsed, but the world it created was never the same again.